Are you ready to break free from a conventional life and achieve financial independence through your version of tiny living, but you're feeling stuck trying to figure out the money part? Does the pressure to conform to societal norms make it even more difficult to embrace an unconventional lifestyle? Well, you're in the right place. I'm Laura Lynch, host of the Less House, More Moolah podcast, where every Thursday I'll bring you captivating interviews with individuals who have successfully made the transition to tiny living. They defied expectations and are thriving in their unique lives. We'll also dive deep into industry resources to address common financial concerns on your tiny journey. Together, we'll explore the emotional and practical aspects of pursuing an alternative lifestyle. I will describe a clear framework for project planning and cash flow management. Our goal is to intentionally build financial security and make a positive impact through our alternative American dream. So gear up for an exciting and empowering journey to create a life that truly resonates with you. Let's dive into today's episode and take the first steps towards financial independence and purpose through tiny living. Okay, let's talk values. Values are something that I have put in at the foundation of my business and this podcast, and they've become a really important building block for everything that I'm doing in my life, and here's why. So I'm one of those nerdy people who really loves assessments. I've taken a lot of different assessments over the years. I'm an Enneagram 4. I'm always trying to figure out my own identity, and assessments help me understand myself and my actions. And yet, assessments will tell you something about yourself and your behaviors and maybe your style and how you approach things. But what assessments don't do is tell you where you should go next or what your life path should look like in a most fulfilling way. They're not a blue book for life. They don't tell you whether or not that you will do better with children or being child-free or living in a mansion or living in a tiny house or living out of your car. Assessments are, sort of complexity, personality, style, preferences based, but they really don't help you understand where you want to go and how you want to craft your life moving forward. So that's where values have become a really important piece of the puzzle for me and for my partner, Eric. We have spent a lot of years trying to figure out where we wanted to go next and what we wanted the next chapter of our life to look like and what we could do together that would be fulfilling for both of us. But we didn't really have a framework for figuring out what that was. And so I think that with change, and anytime we're trying to make some sort of life pivot, whether it be in career or geography or we just feel unfulfilled and we're trying to figure out where we can go that'll make us truly happy, we get kind of stuck because we don't really have a framework for how to figure that out. You can certainly take some stabs in the dark sometime and you can say, this is what I don't want my life to look like. But it's really hard sometimes to figure out where you do want to go. And so by spending some time exploring, pinpointing, and identifying your values, you can then start to construct what your future life should look like based on what is important to you, what is deeply important to you and has been for your whole life. And this is the thing about values is they are born out of some learned or birthed feature of us at a very young age. I would say my values have been pretty consistent throughout my life. And so they have been really helpful in guiding me and Eric both as we are constructing what our future life looks like. So on the tinyhouseadvisor.com, my website, I do have a downloadable values worksheet. And I really came across this concept of values not that long ago, actually, when I was listening to Dare to Lead on Audible or Kindle, I guess it is, with Brene Brown. And so she talks a lot about values as well. And so that was really how Eric and I launched our exploration of values and understanding ourselves on a deep level as far as what those key motivations are. And so there's a whole list of values. And, this is really just one way of thinking about values. There are obviously things that are not listed on a value sheet, things like individuals or particular experiences or particular feelings. So really, there's a whole universe to explore with values. But the value sheet that I provide on my website is a good starting point for thinking about those top 2 things that help drive you forward. So after sort of going through this worksheet and circling a whole bunch of different things and trying not to circle the things that you think you're supposed to circle, but really circle the things that are true to you and have been true your whole life, and then narrowing those down, the list of things down to the exact 2 things that really are concrete. These are things you would write on your mirror to say, this is really how I define life success. This is how I expect me to act in a daily basis, or what drives me to act on a daily basis. These are the things that are present when I feel most fulfilled. And for me, a couple of those things are true now throughout my entire life. They are the thread running through my business, through my future tiny lifestyle, and really represent the pillars of what success looks like for me. And one is independence. So I have chosen to take my business independent, and I feel like independence in all its facets is something that I really want to continue to strive for and integrate wherever possible. And independence for me looks like getting to call the shots and getting to sort of weasel through all the complexity myself so that I feel like I am strong on my own. It is something that probably showed itself when I was a young kid running around in the woods by myself. I felt very independent, and this has always been true for me and gives me a great sense of accomplishment when I'm able to move in that direction in any part of my life. The other one that really resonates very strongly for me on that list of values that's available by download at the tiny house or the tinyhouseadvisor.com is exploration. I think explorer might be on the list, but in any case, it's not adventure. It's not bungee jumping. It's exploring. It's my tendency to get bored easily, my need to see new things, my need to explore concepts, my need to explore people, my need to explore terrain. I have a constant craving to dive into things, and that is an exploration feature that I've had present in me my whole life as well. And so by really cutting that huge list of words down to just those 2 things, I was able to look forward into the future and say, how do I design my future around independence and exploration? Another thing that has really cropped up for me as I am heading through my years and am now middle age is the impact, legacy, significance of my life. And this podcast and certainly my business are the 2 pieces that I view as filling that need. And I expect that to be more and more important for me going forward. So I think it's fair to say that values certainly can shift and shape over time based on different life stages that we go through. Certainly, a key feature of tiny living will be that minimalist piece, which may or may not be a value that really comes up in even your top five. That can be more of a means to an end, to another value. For me, minimalism is just a means towards independent and exploration. It allows me to be more independent. It allows me to separate myself from a large corporation and go out on my own with my business. It allows me to be able to hike and explore, and by my minimalist lifestyle. The minimalism for me is not an end unto itself, but is a segue for those other two values that I hold. So when you are looking through this list of values, it is a great partner exercise if you do have a partner. When Eric and I had this discussion, it was, a pretty long multi-hour thing that we did together, and we continue to talk about it. And it was actually very revealing for me to understand what my partner's couple of values were, because it helped me understand a little bit more what was most important to him about our life moving forward, and make sure that the dream where we were creating, we were on the same page with that. So making sure that values are in alignment with whatever dream you're creating for yourself really is about honing in on your dream and sort of separating yourself from the mimetic desire that I've talked about before, which is where we craft our life around what somebody else has told us to want. So I think it's hard sometimes for us to figure out what we want versus what we think we're supposed to want. And so the values exercise can help us to dive deep into our own self if we do it in a very self-reflective way and try to cut out some of the outside voices that we may kind of hear kind of peeking into our internal conversation and trying to express sort of the social norms or the expectations. Instead, understanding our own voice and listening to our own values and really thinking through what has been most important or most fulfilling for us our entire lives is just a key step for figuring out how to move forward. And that kind of brings in that idea of change. So many of you listening may be exploring the idea of tiny living in one capacity or another. And yet it's hard to really know if it's going to work for you and if it's really something worth pursuing, because it ain't easy. So how do you figure out if it's something worth doing the work for and trying to figure out? And that's where I think the values assessment is really important for figuring out how to move forward. And that is to see if it aligns with your values. Likewise, any life planning, which of course brings in logistical, family, career, financial components, all of that change can be really difficult to walk into or make a plan for if you're not sure if what's on the other side is going to be fulfilling or better or more enjoyable than what you have today. And so, like I said earlier, it's really hard to figure that out. There isn't a magic test you can take to tell you what your most fulfilling life will be in 5 to 10 years. You can imagine what that life might look like, but a lot of times our imagination is based on the inputs that we've had from some sort of, collection of media images. If we think about a vision board as an example, when we sit down to create a vision board, which is a great exercise, and I've had a lot of fun with vision boards, we're pulling out other people's ideas about what something looks like. And we're pulling them out of magazines that are there and intending to promote a product, for example. So retirement is a key piece here. A lot of times people have this vision around retirement that looks like something involving a beach and a lot of free time. And yet we know that people are not most fulfilled when they're doing nothing. Also, their health suffers. So there is not a lot not a lot of great features of just sitting around with your feet in the sand all the time. You really need to have that sense of fulfillment and contribution and social connection, all those things that are important for our mental well-being. We also need exercise and nutrition. So a beer in the sand on the beach is probably not the best picture for the long term, but yet that is what we think of when we think of the word retirement. And so that's what goes on our vision board. But that is probably not the best picture that aligns with your values. And so creating an image, a mental image of your future that aligns with your values may look like something completely different than you've seen before. And sometimes it's hard to imagine things we've never seen. So perhaps by looking over this list of values and just sort of listening to your inner voice about which ones really are most true to you, what are the things that you would have tattooed on you? You can kind of figure out, well, how do I create a life that looks like those two values? And so as you're exploring whether tiny living is a good option for you, you can pair it up against those values and figure out if that is truly what is going to be the most fulfilling for you moving forward and whether it's worth the effort to go down that road. So once again, you can grab that worksheet off of my website, the Tiny House Advisor with an ER.com, and download that worksheet. And if you have some thoughts about values exploration, if you've been through this exercise before, if you've never been through this exercise before, certainly leave some comments or jump into my community, also at thetinyhouseadvisor.com, and let me know what you have found about your own values and how you're using them to craft your life moving forward and how it has or hasn't helped you as you're thinking about what your plan is into the future. So, Eric.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Less House, More Moolah podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here. Listeners, this is Eric, my partner, and we're super excited that you are here today so that we can talk a little bit about the values worksheet. So in an earlier segment, I talked about the values worksheet and how important it is for figuring out a good life plan and financial plan. And so as you and I have gone through this exercise together, I thought it would be great just to share your insights and perspective on the values worksheet and kind of go back and think about the conversation that we had and how it helped inform us as we were trying to make important decisions about where we were going to go next.
Sure.
So for those of you who haven't grabbed the worksheet, it's on the tinyhouseadvisor.com, and you can put in your name and email address and grab this worksheet. And so, Eric, do you remember us having this conversation, and what was that like for you?
Well, like a lot of things, it was maybe, I don't know, a little outside my comfort zone. Anytime we talk about some of these relationship building or, the psychology or all that kind of stuff. That's like more your thing than it is my thing. So I'm a little uncomfortable with it. And, then when presented with this and, all of these values, it's not super easy for me to look at that. And, I often, to discount maybe the importance of that.
Mm-hmm. And so you did it anyway.
I did it anyway. But really for me, it's not super easy. I really got to, go over the list and think and go over. But finally, you do start to narrow it down, and then you start to, see a couple of these values that really resonate with you. And then, from there, I think it is a really good, solid foundation to build upon, because, once you're acutely aware of like the things that are important to you, then you've got a good base to build off of.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's why this is so important for planning. And as I said in the earlier segment, it gives you a sense for how to move forward, as opposed to just kind of reflecting on who you are today, or, kind of how things have played out in the past. So how do you see your two values that you identified as playing into our tiny living moving forward? How did that those two values kind of help you come to a sense that the way that we were thinking about moving forward was right for you?
Well, first, you're always looking forward and I'm always looking backward. So I kind of narrow down my values, and then I look backward, and they do seem to align with, my past. And then I think about moving forward. And, one of mine is efficiency. And I think that may fundamentally be tied to the work that I do. I'm a builder. So building efficiently is a core value of mine. And then all of a sudden, we're talking about moving forward into a tiny living lifestyle where efficiency is important, especially I think in a smaller space. And that kind of I'm like, oh, it's an aha moment where it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was a great aha moment for me, understanding your value around efficiency, because it has helped me understand kind of some of the impatiences that you'll have from time to time. Like, for example, the other day when we were, pulling fence line, and, I could sense that I wasn't doing it quite efficiently enough, because it's not it's not what I do all day, every day. So anyway, it helps me just kind of understand a little bit better how you have values and when they're maybe violated. And I think the same is true for anybody. When you have those core values and you may not even know what they are, when they get violated in your life, that's when things can, really trigger you. And maybe having some awareness around those allows you to have a little bit more patience or learn how to adapt in those situations.
Sure.
Yeah. So then beyond efficiency, there you have another one that you
well, let's talk about one of yours.
Okay. He's taking over my podcast. What would you like to talk about, Eric?
Let's talk about your exploration.
Yes. Exploration is like all encompassing, right? And it's not even, like you and I were talking a little bit before this video about curiosity. And I think curiosity is a key point of that. I think I really realized how important exploration is to me the first time I was living out west, because maybe it was the first time I was really able to explore in a way that seeing things I'd never seen before.
Sure.
Although, of course, I've traveled, some, having lived overseas and whatever, and there was exploration going on there too. But I think being on a four-wheeler out in the middle of BLM land is a very key example of exploration. And when I saw petroglyphs in the wild for the first time, that was like mind-blowing for me. And that has triggered some sort of, thing deep in me that I want to be out seeing new places. And seeing new people and, seeing new concepts and exploring new ideas and exploring myself, exploring the deep intricacies of you that you don't like to get into all the time. Right. So exploration is just kind of a through line with everything that kind of moves me forward. And yet where we are standing right now, as we're still on our path to our tiny downsize, we're in a place where exploration is pretty much non-existent when it comes to geography, at least, because there's just not a lot of empty spaces. And when it's 101 degrees outside, it makes exploration kind of hard. So yeah, that's a really good one. I like that. So,
well, my other value was resourcefulness. And, when you're talking about exploring, I am thinking about, a raw piece of land and the resources that are on it. Maybe it's what can I do with these rocks or this timber or water, or, the particular piece of property we have has, little caves and cliffs and, aside from the land itself, what resources can I use in the area? What can I reclaim, rebuild, reuse, repurpose? And, being a builder, again, I just love, that feeling where you can put something together.
Yeah, I love that. It makes us the dynamic duo.
Right. The dynamic duo.
Yeah, so that's a really good one. And I love that resourcefulness, and especially in a world where resources have become maybe not more scarce necessarily, but certainly a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
We all have to focus a little bit more on using the things that we do have and repurposing things and maybe wasting less and, all of that. So I like that. I like that value in you.
Thank you. So back to you, your other value.
Yes.
Which may not be too surprising, is independence.
Oh, yes. Independence. Yes. There are a few people who have encountered me on my path in life who made it very clear to me that I was a pretty independent person. I don't know where that, where all that came from, but I do, remember spending a lot of time by myself, as a kid. And maybe that's what makes you independent. Maybe it's being, the oldest child. I have no idea. But in any case, I feel like everything that I've done throughout my wild and wiggly path in life has been driving me towards an increased level of independence. And all of we were talking earlier, all the education that I've gotten has just been all fueling my confidence towards that independence. And certainly our design around our life moving forward is intended to make us less dependent and more self-sufficient. And so I think that that's probably a value that maybe wasn't in your top 2, but maybe was somewhere in your, top 5.
Oh, for sure. Well, being, self-sufficient and independent and resourceful and efficient are all things that I just think are important today and probably going to be increasingly important as we move forward in a maybe some would say a challenging time.
Yeah, challenging, at least changing for sure.
Right.
Yes. So, yeah, I think that, this was really good. Frankly, I had no idea what my 2 core values were before we did this exercise. And I, heard about this through, Brene Brown and Dare to Lead. And when I first, looked at this list, it was more out of curiosity to understand me, to understand you a little bit better. And then ultimately, it really turned into a framework whereby we could make sure that the decisions that we're making about a future for ourselves, that because we haven't lived it full time is somewhat unknown, that we were aligning with our values. That way we could make sure that the life that we're creating really syncs up and resonates with what is most important to us, which I think will lead to overall greater satisfaction in the long term.
Sure. In alignment with our values and staying true to things that are important to us.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that this, was great for the two of us. I think it was one of the many things that we have done to help us get on the same page and at least, have a way to talk about things and a way to think about things together, as opposed to thinking in two separate worlds, which, we tend to do since we're very different humans.
And you're very independent.
And I'm very independent. You're pretty independent yourself.
Okay. Yeah. That might be in my top 5.
Yeah, in your top 5. Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experience with this exercise, because I think that'll be helpful for people who maybe aren't as nerded out on assessments and that sort of thing as I am, because it's good to have that perspective, because not everybody is used to digging into the depths of their psychological complexity.
That would be me.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you all next time. Again, you can grab this worksheet at thetinyhouseadvisor.com, and you can download it and you can have your own conversation with yourself or with a partner about what is deepest and most important to you for your future.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Less House, More Moolah. To access valuable financial tips and resources tailored to your tiny living journey, join our exclusive community at thetinyhouseadvisor.com. Here you'll find a supportive network of like-minded individuals committed to helping each other navigate the challenges and celebrate the victories of embracing a minimalist lifestyle. So don't miss out on the opportunity to be part of this empowering tribe. Be sure to tune in next Thursday for another insightful episode of Less House, More Moolah, where we'll continue to explore practical solutions and inspiring stories to help you create the life you've always dreamed of.
Please see the show notes for important disclosure regarding the Tiny House Advisor LLC and this episode.